What is service learning? Well, it integrates meaningful community service with instruction and critical reflective thinking to enrich your experience. So by that we mean we're going to ask you to go into a nonprofit setting in the community, and typically students, we think of nonprofit settings as being the social service agencies that meet human needs, so shelters or organizations that help new immigrants or food banks. That kind of thing. But there are animal rescue organizations that are nonprofit, and health organizations, and arts organizations, and environmental organizations, just to name a few. So there are lots of different kinds of nonprofit organizations out there in the community that you can get involved in.
Part of it is just getting started.
I love service learning. The kind of work, the kind of growth that I see among students who are able to participate in it is phenomenal. There's so much more depth and maturity, and they themselves are really proud at levels that they had not anticipated.
Students will always receive credit for their service learning work in the class that they're taking. Certain professors offer it as an assignment in place of another kind of assignment, maybe a research paper. So they do this hands-on learning instead of research-based learning. And then other people incorporate it in other ways in their class. But the student's always going to receive credit in their academic class. And then they can add on what I call a bonus option. They can sign up for an additional 2 credits, which are SLN or service learning credits. And in that instance, their professor would look at their service learning work again outside the context of all of the work they've done for their most likely 5-credit class, and give them a grade just on their service learning. Not all students need this kind of elective credit. It is a transfer credit, but some people have maxed out on that kind of credit, and they do have to pay for it, and some students don't want to pay for the credit either. So they can let me know that they want a free notation on their transcript that simply says service learning, doesn't have any credit attached to it, doesn't up their GPA, or doesn't affect their GPA, but it looks great to a receiving institution that's looking at their transcript, because everybody knows what service learning is. If you choose to sign up for those additional 2 SLN credits, Tracy will look at your service learning work a second time, but she'll not in the context of all the work you've done for the history class. You'll just draw it out and look at it again and give you a grade on your service learning again. So for most students, it's a pretty easy way to up their GPA, because most students do very well in service learning and essentially are getting graded on that work twice. There are many benefits. Certainly there's the benefit of learning the classroom material better. So for example, if you're taking a psychology class, developmental psychology class, you're learning about the different stages of human development. If you're working at a nursing home and the person that you're having a conversation with repeats herself 5 times, then you're saying, oh yeah, that's what we read in the textbook, that at this stage of development, people often are forgetful. So there's a real benefit to their classroom learning. Then I always talk with students about all the benefits outside the classroom. It can help them get into a 4-year university, because universities like to see that students are involved in the community, not just doing things for themselves. It can help people in the job search. They can put it on their resume. Volunteer experience is just as valued as paid experience, and they're learning workplace skills that are transferable. People often get references from their supervisor at their volunteer site, or they might even be offered a paid position. And then for a lot of our students, it's an opportunity to check out a potential career.
Part of the course is to give service learning in a project, and this was at St. Mary's. And so 4 or 5 people met here, and we spent 6 hours preparing food and handing out food in the lines for people waiting for their food bags. Well, this was a good experience too, because it kind of bonded me with the other students, and we had a connection we didn't really get in the classroom before, working together and learning how fun it was to really help people in need.
This most recent class, they put on a silent auction, and like at this restaurant on Broadway. The restaurant gave them the whole space for a night, had this silent auction with entertainment, and invited all their friends. I went, invited some of my friends. It was packed, and they raised like almost $1,000 for us, and just incredible. And I didn't have to do anything, you know, they organized it all. So that's unprecedented, you know, that's never happened, so.
So we ask students to put in a minimum of 16 or 20 hours over the quarter, a commitment of about 2 hours a week. There is time setting it up front. That doesn't count in those hours, and that takes some doing because they're always leaving messages back and forth. It's hard to reach people sitting at their desks. You know, there's travel time, perhaps, unless they're doing something on campus, and then 16 to 20 hours of service time. Because of its service learning, there is the reflection work, and they will be expected to put in academic class writing or presentation, academic time as well. As far as finding a placement, I encourage students to incorporate an interest that they have, or a skill interest, a hobby interest, or a career interest. That would certainly make the service learning more interesting to them. A lot of our students are already working at nonprofits, so if they're working at a nonprofit, whether it's for pay or volunteering their time, if what they're doing there, or if they can change what they're doing there, but if that organization can provide a connection with the academic class, then they don't need to find another agency. Sometimes we have parents who need to volunteer at their child's school, or people who are doing work for their religious organizations. For students who don't have an idea, who want suggestions, for most classes I will hand out a suggested list, and just to give students an idea of what would be appropriate placements for that particular class, and those agencies and more are listed in the Service Learning Yellow Pages, which is a compendium of profiles on agencies that we've worked with that want to be in our resource book, that know our program and can work with students for a very limited time. To make a student's search a little bit easier, I've put 2 indices in the front of the book. The first one is by category. So if a student has a particular interest, whether it's on campus or homelessness or youth or arts, they can find that category in the first index. The second index is a quick reference. It's all of the agencies in the book listed alphabetically with one line about what the agency does and what the volunteer opportunities are. There are 3 copies of the Service Learning Yellow Pages in my office and 1 in the library for use after hours. The manuals, there's 1 for the agency and 1 for the student, and there are a couple of forms in each manual, and those are available online. The student manual explains the program to the students, but it also has past students' comments about their experience. It has a little script about what do you say when you call an agency, so it has some helpful information. But then the part that they really need to pay attention to is there are 3 forms in there that they need to fill out. One is a contract between them and the agency. They need to give that to their professor, and the professor then signs off on that placement or decides it's not going to be a good one for that particular class. And once they've gotten approval on their placement, then the second form they have to fill out is a data form that they bring to me. It tells me where they're doing their service learning and whether they want the additional credit or the free notation on their transcript. And then I call all the agencies based on that information so that I can make sure things are running smoothly and know that the agency has my phone number and will call me if they have concerns along the way. And then there's a timesheet in there for the student to keep track of and get a signature from the agency at the end, and they give that to their professor. So they have to document their hours. Even if they've done great written work, great reflection work, they're not going to get credit for service learning if they haven't put in the minimum number of hours.
Indeed, the possibilities for contribution are as infinite as the group itself.
The kind of writing that they do as they try to figure out their roles, what they're learning, how that agency's work or program connects to the history that we're studying is so original. It's very original, it's very creative, and that's one of the most powerful things about it.
So this is Nakan's portfolio about her work at the Wingluk Asian Museum. And this was really quite intriguing because for herself as an international student from Vietnam, well, let her words speak to you. I'm interested in the life of Asian Americans in general, My parents had planned to immigrate to the United States in hopes of finding other opportunities and a better life for the family. However, their plan was ruined because they couldn't secure the papers and they were unable to immigrate illegally like lots of other Vietnamese at the time. I thought that was a pretty bold statement, also true. In the end, they stayed in Vietnam and they started a life with different goals. This was my chance to look through a life that might have been mine if my parents had been able to immigrate. A life that could have changed who I am right now, a new society that would have reshaped my mind and my thinking in a different way.
It is a time of exploration, even while you're trying to fulfill requirements. And through that service learning, you may even find more clarity on a possible career that you're imagining, among other sorts of opportunities. And so I do believe it's a really creative space in which to find out more about yourself as well as the college work that you'd like to pursue.